Okay, it's always nice to be talked about in such nice words. So before I begin, as way of an introduction, I have a little video for you to watch. It's about 2 or 3 minutes long. So if you want to start that.
Food on the Edge is a collective coming together of like-minded people to talk and debate about the future of food and also to exchange food stories from around the world. I suppose essentially it's a way of bringing people together through food, thinking about food more as something cultural as opposed to just being a vehicle for hunger. When you bring a high caliber of chefs together, it can often be very gratuitous and self-congratulatory. And I think the important thing for us is to come together and realize what we're not doing. I mean, when you're talking to a bunch of like-minded peers, it can seem like you've already done the job, but I mean, when you go out into the world, you can see that we haven't done the job, and if anything, good food is failing in the majority of cases. And so it's very, very important to acknowledge that, to acknowledge our failings, and then look at ways in which we can improve in small ways, because I think any change that comes is going to come in a small way, and there's going to be gradual momentum. I don't think there's any answer to the problems that we have, or any one answer. I think there's a lot of small changes that need to be made, and that can take a long time. Heritage came up a lot, and we had speakers from various different places, from as far as the Lebanon, Zimbabwe, China, Japan. I mean, using food to engage in the history and culture of different peoples. And I think there's an untapped food history wherever you go, and it goes back tens of thousands of years. And I really think that can be investigated, and that can be, I suppose, become part of the makeup of a particular region's cuisine. I think there's a saturation of talking and photographing food. Without action, the whole process becomes quite stale and repetitive, and it's important that we don't all just return to the kitchen and continue on as normal, saying, okay, that's great, job done. I think it's really important that we go back into the kitchen or into the industry and then see what more can we do, and whether that's in relation to food waste, organic farming, using more seaweed, sustainable protein as well. I hope that by raising the issues, it will inspire chefs in Ireland and also around the world to, I suppose, to just get the confidence to go and do it and say, well, I'm going to make this change, and rather than saying, well, I do this because it's the consumer who wants it. The consumers are very adaptable to what they take, and I think it's just a certain kind of bravery, or a brave step that's needed. It started from a very, very humble place, and I want to keep it that way, because I think kind of humility is a way of, I suppose, bringing ourselves closer together.
Okay, well, that's me. If you have any questions later on, you can ask me. So I am a chef and a restaurateur, and sometimes I put flowers in my beard. Just my inner hippie. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about sustainability and aquaculture. I'm by no means an expert on aquaculture, it's something that I engage with a lot, but I suppose the issue of sustainability is something that is quite near to my heart. So what I'm going to talk to you about over the next 30 minutes is how we as chefs can influence the market. I also want to talk about the need to better educate the consumer or the public. And then lastly, I want to talk about the importance of social responsibility and sourcing, and also in that the role that aquaculture can play in feeding a growing planet. And as many of you know, aquaculture is a massive part of feeding people, particularly since the 1950s. It has grown absolutely exponentially, and now roughly like half or more of the fish that we get comes from aquaculture. But we've always had a certain amount of aquaculture. I'm very interested in history and the history of food, and if anyone is interested in that, I mean, aquaculture stresses back to Neolithic times and the way in which we farmed or fished eel and trapped eel in various places so we could go and get them when we wanted to. Also, the Japanese have cultivated seaweed for thousands of years, and that's something that for me now is the most, I suppose, innovative thing that we could do. Is really in Ireland pay attention to our seaweed and start using it as a national resource for food, instead of giving it to the farms as a fertilizer. And also the Romans farmed fish and oysters. So again, we have a great tradition of historically of farming fish, but very much since the 1950s it has grown exponentially. And I'm sure there's a few in the audience that are experts on this, so I won't say any more. Interestingly enough, and I always have like little tidbits of that the first time aquaculture, the word was used, was in relation to farming ice in 1855. And that's an interesting thing. I suppose when we think about chefs as influencers and how we can influence people, the way I do it is through imagery. I also do it through my food. But as I always say, sometimes it's not enough just to cook. You need to tell people about it. This is a photo of me a good few years ago, because I look a lot better then. On a farm, one of our farmers in Roscommon. And we have worked with this farmer for over 10 years. He's a very, very young farmer. He's entirely free-range pork, and the pigs are fed from food that is grown around the land. And so this is an image we use a lot to try and showcase what we do in the restaurant, to try and give people the bigger picture. We also work with a myriad of different small producers in the west of Ireland. Stefan, our fishmonger, Ronan Byrne, our chicken farmer. These are the two. Can I point this thing? Oh yeah, I can. Yeah. These are our two farmers from the previous farm, and this is Kenneth, our vegetable farmer. So all of the farmers that we work with, I try to use that as an influence, and the best way to do it is to either write about it or to document it. Because of social media, in the last 5 or so years, imagery on food has absolutely taken over. There are about 70 million images of food put up daily on Instagram around the world, like 70 million. And so as a way to break into the food market and try and highlight the issue of sustainability, I think chefs can do that through their social media channels. These are two chefs I'm sure most of you know. I know both of the guys, Rene and Nathan. And this is just an example of what chefs can do through social media. Nathan has like 61,000 followers, and Rene has 543,000. So you can imagine when these guys talk about sustainability and seafood, and Nathan specializes in seafood, that a lot of people listen. And for me, that's one of the imperatives as a chef, is to engage with issues like this. Again, it's not enough for me to just use seafood sustainably. You really need to tell people about it and change people's attitudes towards it. Because if we don't, then we'll keep on going the same old way. And then, of course, as many of you know, we'll run out of fish and then we'll have no fish left. And it's imperative that we either highlight species that we never use, we produce, I suppose, more sustainable practices in aquaculture, and also to try and fish sustainably out in the wild. This is a photograph of Mark Best. He's an Australian chef at our symposium, Food on the Edge, which I showed you the video at the beginning. And another way of the chef as influencer is coming together to talk and discuss and network on a global level. The world is so small, or so much smaller now than it used to be. And it is very, very easy for me to communicate and talk with Mark and exchange ideas. And Mark is based in Sydney in Australia. And so we can talk about the ways in which we can make sustainability a key, I suppose, element in our menus, in our restaurants. Mark does menus for cruise liners as well. So it's not just about feeding 50 or 60 people a night. It's about feeding thousands every single day. And if we don't bring education and information to that menu writing, then we're absolutely lost. If we just keep on going the same old way and keep on using the same old fish, whether it's cod or salmon or monkfish, then we're at fault. And it really is an imperative on the chef's point of view to engage with issues of sustainability, particularly with regards to the ocean. This is another event that we run, again, as a way to influence a culture or a nation. It's an event we run at Aniar once every 6 or 8 weeks, and we invite an international chef, to come and cook with us, and we give them the menu and they bring their ideas. But always at the forefront is trying to engage with your local environment and trying to engage in sustainable practice. So we send out a list of foods that we have, a list of vegetables, seafood, meat, and then they pick and they create their menu based on our ingredients. And so it's a way for us to learn from them technically, but it's also a way for those guys to learn about the foodstuffs that we have in Ireland. And I suppose as a food culture, we're very new, but as an island that's been consuming food for about 10,000 years, we have a long tradition of eating in Ireland. I suppose it just depends on the ways in which that you look at it. Another way that chefs can influence is engaging in demonstrations with producers. This is myself and Ray Collar and a butcher, and it's something I like to do. I mean, again, rather than go on stage, I couldn't bring one with me today, but rather than go on stage and talk about myself or the restaurants, it's very important to highlight those that you work with. And this is another way that chefs can use their influence to dictate or to change the ways that the market works. If I promote Ray as a local butcher, or I promote Stefan's sustainable fish practice, then I hope that consumers will go to them and ask them for advice and be better educated about the choices that they make. Also, the food festival, the Galway Food Festival, which I am of a part, is again another way of using using my influence to get in touch with people. And you don't have to be someone as I suppose as a high profile as Rennie or Nathan or me. I think every chef operates within a community of sorts, and that influence can spread in any way possible. So you can be a commie chef or a chef de partie. It doesn't matter who you are. You can spread that influence and that education. Okay. So I want to go to my second point, and that's the role of education in our food culture, and I suppose its relation to sustainability. This is our T-shirt. I am an immigrant for Food on the Edge this year. It's the potato that's the immigrant, not the kids. It was a way of engaging with the issue of immigration, but also a way of telling people like where food comes from. I mean, everybody associates the potato with Ireland, unfortunately, and we forget about all of this myriad of other stuff that we've had. Like two of the first principal foods of Ireland, as far as I'm concerned, are seaweed and oysters. They are the first things that people ate when they came here. Hunter-gatherers about 10,000 years ago. You could throw in a few mussels as well if you want, but principally living by the coast. The three fish: salmon, eel, and trout. They are, like you could say, the five principal foods that we should define ourselves as a nation. And it's very, very important to try and communicate this to the level to the primary school level. These kids are 6th class, so they're about 10 or 11, and I think it's very, very important that we try and establish some type of subject in the curriculum that deals with food. Like, we're completely ignoring it. Like, we just hope that kids will vicariously learn through their parents and through society what's good to eat and what's bad to eat. But we don't have any social responsibility apart from sticking the odd ad up on television saying, don't eat this, eat this. And we continue to say, well, maths and English are the most important subjects, and you could throw Irish in there if you wanted as well, and computing. But English and maths are, generally speaking, they're the ones that everybody focuses on. And we need a food subject. Again, what that would look like, I do not know. But I think it should take in growing, history, geography. It could take seafood. All of these different things, and for a kid to come in at 4 or 5 and to start to learn about food, and then at 18 go out into the world and actually know what a piece of fish looks like, and that it has a head and a tail, and it doesn't come in a plastic box. And these are things you might think I'm joking about, but there's plenty of documentaries that have been done now asking people about where animals come from, what do they look like. And we are gradually losing our ability to actually engage with the natural world. And everyone assumes that it just comes ready-made in a little plastic box. So it's very, very important to engage with schools. And at the moment, everything is done on a voluntary level. And I'm sure if any of you have kids and you've ever gone in to talk in the school, it's very much dependent on how lucky the school is if it has a load of different parents who are engaged in food, and therefore they get a good education. The opposite end of times, you go into a school and they don't know where an egg comes from. And you might think that's impossible. It's not impossible. I've talked to kids. Where does an egg come from? The shop. That's it. There's no one else. The eggs, I don't know where the eggs come from. No one told me. Why do you need to know where eggs come from? They're just in the shop. And that's something that's severely lacking in our food culture. This is an example of our menu in Aniar, our one-star restaurant, and for me it's vital that we use that menu to educate our diners, and that's why we list off our suppliers, and we support them as I suppose as cooperators, that we work with them, and collaborators, that we cannot do this menu over here unless we have all this stuff. And you can see that a lot of it, about 98% of our menu in Aniar comes from Ireland. I would say, like, there's 2 products we use that don't come from Ireland: sugar and white flour, because we don't produce them in Ireland. But every single other thing we got rid of: lemons, pepper, chocolate. Every other element we just said we're going to produce a food that will reflect the terroir of the west of Ireland and Ireland in general. And that's what we've been doing for 6 years. If any of you are around, you can go down. We're open tonight. We do not have a waiting list. We're not booked out for 6 months, as many people think. You need to spread that around. People always ring and ask, saying, "What's your waiting list?" And I go, today, so you can come in. And do I need to book 6 months in advance? Only if you want to. So it's a common myth about Michelin star restaurants that they're booked out all the time. It's nonsense. I don't know who's propagating the myth. And so we offer a tasting menu, and we really just try and showcase the larder of Ireland. This is an image in Killary Harbour in front of the mussel farm. And it's all the chefs that we brought over for Food on the Edge last year, and other people. Some very, very famous chefs. Pierre Kaufmann, very, very famous French chef. David Kinch is there as well. And we, Food on the Edge, we bring people together. They talk for 2 days, and then we take all of the speakers on a 2-day trip somewhere. Last year we went to Killary, Mayo, to Cong, and to showcase them the wonderful seafood that we have. The mussels, the oysters, the clams, the langoustines, all of these different things. And we brought them all out into the mussel beds, and we talked them through how these are produced and the wonderful waters that we have. And this is vital to educate people about the foods that we have, and also the sustainable foods that they should be eating. So, like, food tourism plays a massive role in developing a food culture, and we need to select the right foods to influence the wider public. When you think of Ireland, you generally think of this, okay? And someone, this is one of our images, but someone explained this to me recently, that you have mostly green and mountains, you throw in a few sheep, and then you put a little bit of the sea, just for like a touch, to say we have the sea. And we're guilty of promoting the island like this. And then we wonder why people come and go, do you have fish in Ireland? We go, yeah, we do, we're an island. And it goes, and do you eat fish? And then most people go, no, I hate it. And that we just look at the sheep, as someone recently filled out a Fáilte Ireland form and said, why are all the sheep out in the fields and you're never on the menus? And we, of course, we have a lot of cows, a lot of cows. And for some degree, you can blame history, you can blame colonialism, you can blame the British, you can blame whoever you want. We use this island as a grazing ground for cattle. That is what this island is principally used for. We just took over, after we got independence, said, oh, sure, all the cows are there, we'll just keep on going with the cows. And the ports weren't developed, and we said, actually, the fish lads will be grand. We'll just leave them to it. And then when we joined the EU, we said, sure, we don't really need the fish at all. We'll give them all to Spain French, and we'll just keep the cows. And that's working to a certain degree. Now, it's not working so well now once the South Americans start bringing the cows in. But we will defend absolutely die over the cows. And when the fish, we go, it's all right, doesn't matter. We don't even have seafood in Ireland. And you think I'm joking. When I bring these world international chefs over, they go, Ireland, all right. The first thing they ask you, are you independent? And we go, we are independent. And they go, do you have fish? And we go, we do. And it goes, how come you never have it on your menus? And how come you never talk about it? I go, because we give it all to you. And Albert Adria, famous chef from El Bulli in Spain, was amazed that we had oysters. Absolutely amazed. And mussels. Absolutely amazed. I said, you're probably using them on your menu in Barcelona, but we just don't brand them because we're not very good at branding our fish either. Now, we're getting better. But for a long time, we used Ireland as a food, as a place to make commodities, and rather than to produce food. So we grew our mussels, our lobsters, our cows, and then we just exported everything, and everyone ate it. And now I think you have a new generation that are branding what they do. So you have, let's go back, Marty's Mussels in behind. And they export all around the world. You have Kelly's Oysters as well, export all around the world. But where do people eat the least amount of Kelly's Oysters? Galway, where they're located. Where do people eat the most? Saudi Arabia and Japan. Okay, so that's like absolutely insane. Why aren't we eating what we produce at home? So we do need to think about the ways in which that we promote the country at a national level and also at an individual level when we talk about it. We always talk about our beautiful green fields, but we have like crystal clear waters that are wonderful for growing seaweed and for aquaculture in general. Another area that we need to influence and educate is the role of how we feed the sick and the unwell, and we're absolutely failing in this regard. This is an image from hospital food from one of our hospitals, and this issue has been highlighted a lot. But unless we change eating habits at this level and at the level of schools, we're completely lost. It's grand for me to serve 15 people a night the best seafood that that we can offer. But if we cannot change this, nothing will change. If we cannot get our best foods, our seafood, all of this into the hospitals, then there is no hope. We're never going to grow as a healthy nation. So we need to change this in order to educate a wider public. We also need to change the way that we think about like what's healthy and what's not healthy. And as someone once said to me, or I read, or I can't remember, that there's no such thing as a healthy or an unhealthy food, okay? People are healthy or unhealthy. Food is nutritious or not nutritious, okay? All these foods are nutritious. You've got fat or butter, salt, and sugar. And we pick these foods because they're easy targets, and we say these are the bad foods. We need to stop using these. And they're not the bad foods. The bad foods are foods that's over-processed, foods that are not, that have no relationship to their landscape. But we need to really think about what we promote as our building blocks. Ireland is built on butter. We have the best butter in the world, like second to none. And again, we have small butter brands and big butter brands, but we have an amazing butter. We have amazing sea salt. Again, something that we seem to just discover in the last 10 years. That we go, oh my God, the sea is there. We can get salt from it. So we don't have to buy it from France anymore. And we have like Achill Island sea salt. We use it in the restaurant. Amazing salt. Up there at Malden. But again, we need to promote it more. We're not like living by, and we're not living up to what we should do. So we keep on buying in. Like I think every time I go into a restaurant, there's always French sel de mer, always French salt. And I say that we have such good salt production. We have some great salt in Oriel in Louth, like loads of different ones. In that all emerged in the last say 5 or 10 years. And these are products that we need. That are farmed from the sea, but that are going to give us an identity and lend it to our culture. Sugar is another thing that we don't produce in Ireland anymore, and a lot of people don't know that because our Sucra, our brand, is actually owned by the Germans. The Germans probably don't know that either, but we go in buying going, oh God, Sucra, it's lovely, it's an Irish product, and has a lovely Irish name, but it's actually made in Germany. I think we gave away the sugar rights as well with the fish, and we just took the beef. I think loads of people sat down in the room and said, you take beef, you take fish, you take sugar. And then it just came out in a big 50-page report, and no one read it. And we said, oh, it's great, we have the beef. But we need to be less of a monoculture, and we need to diversify. And of course, this relates to aquaculture, but it also relates to sustainability. We cannot be sustainable if we decide not to produce certain products, because it's easier just to focus on one. And then what happens if something goes wrong with that one product? Then we're in trouble. I mentioned the food festival, but food festivals in general are a great way to educate people about sustainability. This is the food festival in Galway, happens every Easter. It brings 70,000 people into the city. And that's one of the ways we can channel the idea of sustainability. The idea of saying, if you want to be a part of the festival, we want you to use more local products. And we have a little manifesto. We want you to engage with the producers. We want you just to stop buying out of a catalogue and a code, and actually go out into the world and find the products. And this is our little village where we have all of these little artisan producers from around Galway. And it's a great time to showcase and for people to take a little pause and pop out for the weekend and go, wow, like we produce so much great food, from goat's cheese to to vinegars and to honeys, all of the different things. And food festivals are a way for people to celebrate food as a pleasurable experience. Now, we didn't do that too well in Ireland in the 20th century. Like, food was like, just shut up and eat your dinner, and then when you're finished, go out and play, and do not look at me when you're eating. So we're getting a little bit better now at kind of like eating and talking and celebrating. Like, we're learning a bit from the Spanish and the Italians. But before that, again, it was a bit grim. My last image on education, again, is one from Food on the Edge in year 1. And one of our principal goals at Food on the Edge is to educate people, and sustainability is one of our top 5 goals. I mean, creating a global network, and then how can we be more sustainable from fine dining to street food and everything in between. And so by giving chefs the space to talk about how they deal with food waste, how they engage with decreasing wild fish stocks, all of these things, and we have an audience of about 450, and they listen, and then hopefully that they apply that practice to other things. I want to go on to just my sourcing responsibly now. This is Ronan again with his in his little abattoir. He kills 300 chickens a week. He's one of our central farmers. But using local farms, small producers, is a way that we can change our food culture and make it more sustainable. It has to be at a local level, and wherever it is, tapping into that market is something that we need to do. We also need to engage in what I would call our terroir, or what people call as well the merroir, the sea. And this is an image from the Aran Islands out at Dún Aengus. And these are, I suppose, when I try and think about food, these are the 4 kind of key ideas: that we have a personal relationship with food, with our family. Food is, we're very influenced by place, a sense of place, our time. Now we're now like in the 21st century. What has happened over the last 70 years? We have seen fish stocks anywhere between 50 and 70%. We have used 50 to 70% of the wild fish stock. So that's only, say, in 100 years that we've done that. So you can imagine if that's another 100 years, like, we're going to run out of fish in about 40. Or we're not even going to make it there. And history, understanding what has gone on in this place and what we can do about it. And again, unless we change our eating habits, if we just keep on doing the same old thing, that we're going to run out of things. In this sense, we'll run out of fish. And unless we put in sustainable practices around aquaculture, then we're going to fail as well. So all of this needs to play into the same thing. When we think of fast food, we always think of things that are unsustainable. And this was a project we did, and it's still in its infancy. But it was an idea of trying to produce a fast food that built itself around sustainability, and it was called Farmer. And we launched it, and we did a few pop-ups and that, and I haven't really done anything else with it. But it was just one way in which we can change people's idea about fast food unhealthy. Aquaculture, no. Fish farming is bad. Like, we can change things by doing things better. There's always a means to an end. So it depends on how you do it. I mean, salmon farming has a very, very bad reputation in many countries, but that is not at the fault of the salmon. It's the ways in which we are farming them. And I try and not use, I mean, we use organic salmon, farm salmon now and then. Wild salmon we cannot get at all, maybe for 2 weeks of the whole year. And I really try and avoid using farm salmon, because everybody just wants it. It's their go-to fish. They just go, oh yeah, I'll just have salmon. And we took it off our menu, and there was a little minor revolution. And then people just got used to it. So we don't have salmon anymore. We have this other fish, and it's more sustainable. And that's as a way to educate. History, again, is very, very important in relation to sourcing. And this is a wonderful image of a monk in the 8th century drinking buttermilk, okay? And it's something, again, that we don't pay any attention to as a food culture. The history of food on this island and how long we have been eating it. Everything goes back to the potato, which is only here a couple of 100 years. And we have been here so long eating the resources um, of, uh, of the land. So again, looking back into history is a way in which that we can re-engage. Eel farming, for example, in Lough Neagh has been practiced again since Neolithic times, and it is still going now. And it's the only place you can get eel in Ireland, because it's not, you can't fish it. So the only place you can get eel in Ireland is from the co-op in Lough Neagh, and we use it in the restaurant because eel for me is a historic Irish product that has been used for centuries, and we need to continue that, but it's not sustainable to keep on taking it out of the river. Well, seemingly they're swimming into the ESB turbines as well, but I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, the ways in which we can keep it going is to keep on farming them in a sustainable way to showcase this product, and that's one of my favorite products. Another way that we try and promote our culture and our sourcing is through our bread. And again, bread, everyone loves bread unless you're gluten intolerant. We make 3 breads every day, and we give people a poem with the bread, written by Brendan Kennelly, an Irish poet. And it's a way of stretching the experience, because you eat bread and you never even think about the historical nature of bread, or the fact that we've been eating bread forever. And it's a way in which that we can pass on that tradition, whether it's soda bread or sourdough. Again, these are different traditions that we can engage in and promote, I suppose, a more responsible sourcing. So just for the last part of my talk, I want to just touch briefly on the role of aquaculture in my perspective, how it can feed a growing population. We have seaweed, which again, I think it should be our national vegetable. Seaweed is the national vegetable of Ireland. Will you write that down and text your friends, okay? It is not the potato. There's probably many nations in this room. Just go, some lad on stage just said seaweed was our national vegetable. It should be. And for so long, we have just used it as fertilizer in cosmetics everywhere except eating it. And the only people that ate it were the poor people. And we have seaweed farming going back to pre-Neolithic, pre-farming. I've talked to Michael Gibbons, the archaeologist, and there is evidence of seaweed farming in County Clare, thousands of years old, where people grew seaweed. They set it up as their farm, and he said to me they would kill each other who had the best seaweed, and if you didn't come down and harvest your seaweed for the day, someone else would rob it. And we need to re-engage with that tradition, particularly in Ireland, and to try and use seaweed in a sustainable way to feed people. I mean, the Japanese do it so well. They have seaweed and they have fish that they eat raw. We have both of those things. We like overcooking fish, and we like putting the seaweed on our soil. So we're doing it all backwards. 61% of aquaculture comes out of China, and only 12% is outside Asia. So if you look at any graph of aquaculture, and I just looked at a few of them, it all seems to be happening in Asia. And of course, they have a massive growing population, but we need to engage with this in a sustainable way, and we need to see that that like 42% of our fish are coming from aquaculture. So it's nearly 50%, and that needs to be more, because if we keep on consuming fish the way we're consuming it, and there's going to be no fish left in the sea. This is one of my own images. At least once or twice a week, I go down and harvest seaweed for the restaurant. Again, in a very sustainable way. But this, while I love this practice, it also has to be framed in a certain way that that everyone can't just go down and take whatever they want. So we need to regulate the ways in which we farm seaweed and the way in which we harvest seaweed in Ireland. And rather than giving it away like we gave away our fishing rights, we should own it as a national treasure and then sell it to everyone and make loads of money. And then we won't be so poor as a country. Our other national food stuff is oysters, okay? And oysters are probably up there with my favorite thing alongside seaweed. This is an oyster farmer out by Clifton, and his oyster farm is just there. And this is Nathan Outlaw, the British chef, whom I brought. And Nathan again was was absolutely bowled over by the quality of oysters that we have in Ireland. We have, of course, we have our native oyster, but we have the farmed oyster since the 1960s. And we have like 5 grade A bays in Ireland. We have many, many bays, but we have 5 grade A ones. There are no grade A waters left in England. And so Nathan was saying that we should really appreciate what we have in Ireland, that we have the best waters to grow shellfish. The best waters to grow shellfish, and we can do it in a really sustainable way that is not going to leave a massive footprint. John's oyster farm has like relatively no footprint. The oysters are there in their little cases. So much seaweed gets produced as well. And then I was saying to John, you need to start selling the seaweed. Why are you just walking over it? Massive sheets of sea lettuce and nori and kelp, all this stuff that other countries would be crying out for, and it's just all there floating in the ocean. This is Albert, who didn't realize we had the oysters. The world's most famous pastry chef, and his brother Ferran is probably from El Bulli. Most people would recognize. And again, we're down at Kelly's Oysters here, showing them the wonderful native oyster, which again comes out in September and is around. And the native oyster again has been in Ireland for thousands and thousands of years, and it's something that we can harvest with very little footprint. And rather than again abandon our fisheries, we need to engage with them, and we need to create a way in which we can move forward with them. And rather than seeing fish as a kind of poor man's food or as something to be fasted on, and that's what we did in Ireland for a very long time, we need to see fish as a pleasurable experience, and we need to look at the aquaculture, particularly in relation, I think, to mollusks and crustaceans, and see how we can grow that and how we can feed a growing population. This is my last image, and I think I'm a little bit over, so I'm going to try and finish. But again, they're just a little snapshot of the different trips that we have brought chefs on in Ireland. Again, to highlight what we have, and rather than always go back to the land, we need to go out into the sea and try and create better ways to produce seafood to feed a growing population. Thank you.